So we have an amazing presenter coming up. She is a mechanical engineer. She's a scuba pilot. She is just fantastic in all ways. Erika Bergman is joining us. Make sure her mic.
Am I off mute now?
No, you are good to go. I accidentally unmuted you, but now you're unmuted. So where are we talking to you from?
I'm in Victoria, BC, Canada.
Oh, nice.
And for the very first time, we have not only one snowflake, but we have about a foot of snow outside. And I don't know if you know this, but we are not a snow town. This is the West Coast. So everyone's freaking out. And I'm hunkered in with about a foot and a half of snow in my car, which I have literally never seen before.
So you're getting a unique winter experience for Vancouver, British Columbia, which is
I am. It feels a little bit East Coast, which I don't really know. West Coast, best coast, man. You know. West Coast.
Well, I mean, I would beg to differ, but that's just we all have our favorites. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up your presentation because I'm curious to learn what you've been working on, and more about what you do beyond. Because I have a feeling it's more than just scuba piloting. I mean, there's some robotics and a bunch of other things. Submarine piloting. I apologize.
That's all right. There was that one scuba event, so I forgive you.
Well, and I imagine it's are you scuba certified, or is that not something you have to do to do the piloting?
I am, but I'm spoiled, right? I'm a dive diva. I have a machine that carries all of the equipment for me. It keeps me warm and dry. I can eat a granola bar and talk to my friends. So why would I ever go scuba diving?
So that's the new title I think I'm going to use whenever I get to introduce you now, is just Dive Diva. I hope you're okay with that. Okay, great. We've decided it here, everyone. She's a Dive Diva.
Her deepness is taken, so I'll take Dive Diva.
That's fair. That's a good one. All right. Well, I will let you get to telling everyone all about what you do as a Dive Diva.
Yeah.
And check back in afterward with some questions. So if you have questions, of course, please everyone comment and let Erika know.
So I'm going to try and concisify to kind of get us back on track, but my plan is to talk for about 20 minutes and just have submarine story time, and then answer hopefully any and all questions you have about the ocean. So as promised, I've got fishes and sharks and crocs and some more. So let me just, whoopsies, sneak preview. Let me just blow this up here. So as Wes mentioned, I am a submarine pilot, and I know that's a very odd job title. And most people, the first question they ask is, how did you get into that? And the short answer is through the hatch. And the long answer is I actually started out, I wanted to be an astronaut. Who doesn't lay in the grass at night and look up at the stars and, wish that they could go up there? But as a young woman, kind of living in a very terrestrial existence, feeding cows, laying in the barnyard, looking up at the stars, dreaming of being an astronaut, I didn't really think that there were people who explored the deep ocean. I thought that explorers only climbed mountains and went to space. So that's where my head was. And then I learned some interesting facts about space exploration, which totally changed my mind. So the moon is mapped in such high definition that you could see if you could see if a dollar bill was on the ground, if it was a 1, a 5, a 10, or another denomination. That's how tightly we can see the moon. And on Mars, if you were looking at Google Maps, you could tell what was a house and what was a building and what was a swimming pool. That's about the resolution that we have Mars mapped. In the ocean, we only have mapped in these big swaths. So you could see the difference between a city block and a giant pond, but you can't see any tighter resolution than that for the whole ocean. I decided, well, gosh, sounds like they need some explorers. And so I worked my way into submarines. I mean, it's a very small industry. And the very first time that I saw one, it was in the basement of my building at the University of Washington. I was going downstairs as a good little scientist to get a bucket of dry ice. And there was this yellow submarine with these 2 huge clear windows and a ladder up to the top of it. And I just decided then and there that the heavens opened up and the angels started singing and the light shone down on the submarine, and I knew I was destined to be a submarine pilot. It's my dream job, and I never look back. And I've had some pretty extraordinary experiences down there. So I've had a chance to fly, we call it flying, a lot of different submarines. And the reason we call it flying is, unlike driving a car, where all you have control of really is left, right, forward, and backwards, so 2 dimensions, a submarine's a lot more like a helicopter, where you have this 3rd dimension of up and down and tilt and trim in a lot of different angles. So we call it flying or piloting submarines. And as much as I love piloting submarines, I love telling the stories of what they do. And so I like making films. Sorry, I've got my notes here. I like making films, and I like sharing the stories behind submarines as much as I like piloting them, because we can go as close as we want to what we see underwater. We can go check out tiny little things. Like this is he's called a blenny, and it's a fish. If you hold up your pinky fingernail and you look at your pinky fingernail, it's about the length of your fingernail. They're really, really tiny, and we just get in there with the submarine and we get our cameras, our macro cameras up close, and we take pictures of these little guys. But not everything in the ocean is little. Some things in the ocean are real big. So this is a buddy of mine, actually, Randy. He's in Guadalupe, and they are diving with great white sharks. And let me tell you something about the ocean. It is just as curious about you as you are about it. And so we get lots of visitors underwater. And these sharks, so this was a couple of years ago, and these sharks were so interested in the submarines that I'm still buffing scratches off the windows. Not from the sharks, running into the submarine. They just get really, really close and then brush along the window. And their skin is covered in these, they're called dermal denticles, but these, scales, for lack of a better term, and they're quite sharp on the edges. And they just leave hairline fractures along our nice, precious, clear windows. So all these years later, the sharks have still left their mark. And sharks are really fun underwater because they have a sensor in their snout, which can detect electricity. And so a submarine is an electric vehicle. And so, of course, we have a little bit of electrical signal that is coming off the submarine into the water. So the sharks get really interested, and they're wondering, they notice this signal, and it's a lot bigger than a fish. So they know that they don't want to eat it, but they also have no idea what it is. So they got to come in for a closer look. The ocean is very fun, full of a lot of various curious creatures, and you really have to know how to interact with them. And so as much as I'm in the submarine, sometimes I'm outside the submarine, swimming or scuba diving to make films about the deep ocean or the shallow ocean. And you have to learn how to interact with these creatures. So one creature that I had to learn particularly how to spend time with was the sky. So this is a crocodile. It's an American crocodile in Cuba, and his name is Nino. And as you can see, Nino has some really great dental work going on. I mean, just on point, very shiny, very white. Look at those gums. He looks very healthy. So Nino is this crocodile, and he doesn't necessarily want to eat you, but he's not that discerning. I mean, if you put your hand out, he might try and take a nibble. So what you learn with Nino is to keep the camera entirely between you and him. And he'll come up and he'll open his mouth, and he's kind of exploring you, and he'll just bounce off of things. Not necessarily bite down, but he'll bounce off you. So this was Nino trying to fit my camera in his mouth. Didn't quite make it, but gave me the jeebies. So it's situations like these and stories like these underwater that I feel so grateful that I get to have them, and I am so committed to sharing them. And one thing, I'm really into tech, and I'm really into camera engineering. So one thing I love is the idea of 360 video and virtual reality. And so I decided that one of the most important things that I could do would be to share these stories in a way that felt like you were having that story in real time for yourself. So a couple years ago, last year, 2 years ago, who knows, who cares? We took one of our submarines and mounted these really fancy underwater 360 film cameras all over the submarine, inside, outside, hanging off all over the place. And we made a film of a dive underwater in the beautiful glass sponge reefs of Howe Sound. So I'm going to give you a little preface and we're going to watch a bit of it. So this is what it's going to look like. These are the sponges. Now, I just want you to keep in mind that what I'm showing you is a 360 video unfolded. So it's like looking at a map of the world. It's a circle and it's just been peeled open. So it's going to look stretched in the corners, but just imagine that you're seeing it in 360. So Wes, if you wouldn't mind, will you share a little tidbit of a dive underwater? It's very galactic underwater. As soon as you leave the surface, everything gets really, really still and calm and quiet. And you sort of sink down to the bottom, hundreds of feet underwater. I think for a lot of people on their first dive, there's this sense of fear because it is deep and it's dark, and we're not used to be surrounded by so much darkness. But then you turn the lights on and this whole world
look at this, guys. Look up.
opens up in front of you. You instantly lose your fear because it's just way too cool. It's way too cool to be scared of. It's epic. So that's a little piece of a dive underwater. And if you want to see the whole thing, that 360 video will be available online. It's one of the things that I like to produce to help take people underwater. So you'll see that whole story. It's about 5.5 minutes long, and it's going to take you 500 feet deep on the glass sponge reefs in Howe Sound in Canada, up here where I live. So along the lines of sharing what I get to do with other people, the job itself is really fun, but it's also a lot of hard work. Oops, I got to reshare here. Oh, give me 1 second. Of course, Keynote has to crash.
Not a big deal. We got a good look at some video. We got to go swimming with you and like see glass sponges. I mean, that's pretty freaking cool.
Well, I've got it back up again.
Okay, there we go. I'm going to grab it for you. We're good to go. And it is all you again to tell us more about, what you're doing and glass sponges maybe. What are those?
Yeah. Okay, so oopsies. Let's go back to the great white. Okay, so we're on these glass sponges, and it is a really incredible experience. And there are so many dive sites all over the world that are worth exploring. And so one of them that we're working on right now, which is very exciting, is actually in the Bahamas. So this is the little submarine that I pilot in the Bahamas. Its name is Nemo, and it has a matching identical sibling called Nomad. So when we're diving in the Bahamas, we dive on this bank. It's called the tongue of the ocean. And if you look at a map of the deep ocean, you'd think of the Bahamas and the Caribbean in general as quite shallow, but there's this piece of the ocean that's very deep that swings up into the Bahamas. And when you have really deep ocean and a wall and very shallow ocean, it means that all these deep sea creatures come up the wall to eat things. So it's this really, really incredible dive site. And we're setting up an operation. We're going to be there potentially for a whole year. As soon as kind of COVID settles down, we'll start taking people on dives again. Right now we're setting it up, but it's been really fun. It's a lot of long hours. So this is Nemo and Nomad. On deck, I would say probably somewhere around midnight. We've finished diving for the night. We're doing the post dives on the submarines, which is not a very glamorous job. And then we're getting ready to pre-dive them again and put them back in the water in the morning. And I really love all of my coworkers. I've had the best experience being a submarine pilot. But one of the greatest things about this new project in the Bahamas is we needed a new pilot. And I got to pick my new trainee. And so for the first time ever, my co-pilot is another chick. So we brought on board another mechanical engineer out of San Francisco. She works on robotics, and she's a marine engineer. And she's been training as a submarine pilot. And I'm very, very excited to spend a year having another woman on board. It's, you know, it's not male dominated because women are pushed out. I think it's just because women don't think, hey, why don't I go work on a ship? Why don't I pilot something? Why don't I become a deep ocean engineer? And so it's been really fun to bring a whole network of people that I admire down underwater with me. And so you might think, oh, well, this must be really unattainable. How could I ever become a submarine pilot? Well, I'm going to show you something and you're going to see it and you're going to be like, oh yeah, I could definitely be a submarine pilot. So take a look at this. Do you recognize it? Yeah, it's a Playboy, what do you call it? PlayStation gamepad controller. It's just a Xbox controller. And there is a little bit more skill involved than just the PlayStation controller. But essentially, if you see that and you feel good about it, you could probably be a submarine pilot. So there's a whole group of young people that I want to bring into the world of ocean exploration, which is why I started this program I'm really excited about called Girls Underwater Robot Camp. And I teach girls how to build underwater robots at camp. So I'm teaching them everything that I can think of about becoming a submarine pilot. I'm teaching them basic engineering. We get really into the weeds about how propellers work and how manipulator arms work and what a hydraulic piston is. They learn some computer programming in Python. They learn welding and how to use laser cutters and 3D printers. And they build this underwater robot, which is actually capable of going 300 feet deep. So it's not a toy. It's a real scientific piece of equipment that they can build themselves. And then drive it around underwater. And look, there's that controller again. So you start with an ROV, a remotely operated vehicle. You move into submarines, no big deal. So that's, it's one of the most extraordinary experiences of my life is getting to share this and bringing people into the world that it's not outside your reach. And so one thing, the way that I like to leave this always is to show people a way that they can do what we do. And so one thing that I really like to push is this early career grant. The way that you become, an explorer, if you want to join National Geographic, they don't come find you. It's not a recruitment process. You apply. And so I really encourage people that are curious, that want to get involved, that want to become submarine pilots or explore mountains or explore rainforests, anything, to apply for grants. There's a bunch of them out there for explorers. And please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions about being an explorer or a submarine pilot, and I would just absolutely love to talk about it.
Well, thank you, Erika, for taking us on that dive with you. Really had a lot of fun seeing your world and getting to come with you. So what I learned from this is that basically every time my mom was like, stop playing video games, you're not going to learn anything, she was wrong.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to call mom. And
everything in moderation.
Well, of course, but like there's some skills I was learning. I could have been a submersible pilot minus the fact that I'm probably a little tall, maybe a little heavy.
Hey, lead on legs, that's what we call it. Because if you don't have heavier people in the submarine, it just means you have to carry more bags of lead. So
I'm as useful to you as a bag of lead. Noted. Got it. Again, this has been a great learning so much. I can play video games and I'm as useful as a bag of lead. So we have one question from Fallon Willis, and she asks, what's your favorite sea creature?
Oh, that's such a good question. And I'm torn because there's my answer and there's somebody else's answer, which is way better. Okay. My answer is a lobster, which sounds boring, but a lobster can live virtually forever. Their cells regenerate every 7 years.
What?
And unless they get killed, they could like live forever. And before we ate a lot of lobsters, there's this thing called deep sea gigantism, which means exactly what it sounds like. Things that live a long time get huge. So lobsters used to be gigantic. Those ones have all just been eaten at this point. But anyway, I love lobsters. But if you ask Sylvia Earle, her deepness, mother of all submarine pilot, she will tell you that her favorite sea creature is a human being, which is a pretty great answer because we are 95% saltwater and we are definitely sea creatures.
And see, I took that as like she loves seeing us in the water and diving and getting to know it. Having met Sylvia quite a few times, I feel like that's her message is get out there and like be in the water and get to know it.
Yeah. So your options for that are lobster or human being.
I mean, they can regenerate. We haven't figured that out yet. So seriously? I'm going to say that's pretty cool just to, you know, thinking about that. So if you're going to be in the Bahamas, are you planning on making any more VR videos, any more things that we could be able to check out or feel like we're going diving with you?
Yeah, well, I'm just sort of trying to decide right now what we're basically building this substation from scratch, and so it can be anything we want. And I'm trying to decide right now between having like a live camera underwater so you can watch the submarine go and come back, that's or so cool. maybe just being really active on TikTok and doing lots of videos on TikTok or making a little web series. I don't know. It's up in the air. If anyone wants to make a recommendation about what kind of content they'd like, now is the time for input.
Yeah, if you got stuff in the comments, because I'm thinking underwater TikTok dance challenges in the submarine bubble. Who's going to be able to top that? I mean, I feel like that sub-step. See, this is what you it's all figured out. So this is what happens here at Women Blaze Trails. We, find you got problems or questions, and we find solutions from some of the best that there is, the best scientists, best explorers, adventurers, and storytellers. And that I want to say thank you, Erika, for spending time with us today. I was just
thank you.
Great to see you and chat a little bit.
Yeah, and I hope you all felt like you got to go on a little dive.
I mean, I know I did. I felt like it was great to have that video clip because you really got to feel like that moment where someone reaches out through the dome is just so cool. So as someone who's not scuba trained, I think I'm going to have to come for a dive with you sometime, maybe down in the Bahamas once we can all travel again.
Please do.
Well, until we see you again, thank you so much, and we'll talk.
You too. Stay tuned for Gracie.